Welcome back to my channel. Happy October, and as I'm sure you have seen from the community post I created, it's Invisible Disabilities Awareness Month. So without further ado, today I'm going to be talking about my experience with navigating non-apparent disabilities. So as fresh as the past month or so, I've been navigating some complications with one of my chronic illnesses, that one of the chronic illnesses that I navigate, and that's hypermobility spectrum disorder. And so this is essentially a genetic connective tissue disorder, and because of the placid or very lax criteria, it's often hard to get genetic testing, as well as just a definitive differentiation between HSD and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So with this comes the territory of being very hypermobile, to the point of that hypermobility inducing pain at all times, at least in my case. So subluxations, just very easy to bruise, poor wound healing, soft skin, or passing the Brighton test with flying colors, being able to move your joints beyond normal range of motion, and the whole nine. And so HSD kind of acts in conjunction with the other chronic conditions that I live with. So in conjunction with HSD, I navigate chronic migraine disease, I navigate chronic fatigue syndrome, I navigate IBS. So navigating all of those things to the point where if there is a complication with HSD specifically, it becomes this domino effect where all of the symptoms that I'm experiencing tend to be heightened from a comorbidity standpoint. And so in this, I have had to navigate just the realm of uncertainty that you become accustomed to with living with an invisible disability or multiple invisible disabilities. The going to multiple doctors and them trying to figure things out, and you trying to be patient and while learning how to manage what you're navigating. So about a month and a half ago, I started experiencing what was typical to me, and that was shoulder subluxations. And my shoulders were kind of alternating with the subluxations, the looseness and the pain, and then it dissipating. So it started with the right, then went to the left, went back to the right, and then went back to my left shoulder, but it felt different this time. So those of you who navigate some level of chronic pain, chronic illness, or disability, like, what your level of pain or symptomology feels like. And when there's something that's just a tad off, it's like, oh, that's a bit different. So I would try to do this thing where I push through it, tough it out. But this was not a scenario in which I felt like toughing it out was necessarily appropriate. So I go to my orthopedic specialist, and we're kind of, discussing back and forth some options. And so initially, I thought it was a muscular issue. So something involving tightness in my shoulder and my muscles overall, which is a fairly typical thing for me. So I get some trigger point injections, and then the next day it continues to get worse. Not because of the injections, but just because of the nature of whatever else I was dealing with. So day after day continued to get worse, to the point where now I'm experiencing nerve pain for the first time in this capacity. Obviously, chronic migraine disease is a neurological disease, but this was different. I've experienced a fractured bone, sprained ankles, damage to tendons and ligaments, and muscular pain and spasmodic activity, but never had I experienced nerve compression, pinch needles, nothing like that. So each subsequent follow-up, we're like, and so as you know, when you have multiple conditions, you become a researcher. And I'm not a WebMD person. I actually have access to scientific journals that I utilize. So I'm not out here just like trying to self-diagnose myself. And I have a background in kinesiology. So I'm well qualified to determine, you know, some sort of semblance of what's going on so I can communicate it to my physician. And so I'm doing that. I'm like, hey, I believe that this is an issue with my nerves because this and this is going on. I'm having the shooting, burning pains. I cannot use my left arm without it causing extreme levels of pain. And so navigating all of this uncertainty to the point where, you know, a certain period of time goes by and now I have to wear a sling because the only position that does not cause intolerable amounts of pain is when it's in this neutral sling position. And so that was the first time outside of like a knee brace or ankle brace or back brace that I had some sort of visible marker of like, oh, something is a bit different externally. And mind you, there's a level of pride associated with that because it's like, I don't want to have to use no sling. Like, I want to be able to use my arm as is. And so there's a level of impatience that comes with that. But there's also a level of uncomfortability because it's not that I care what people think about me. It's the amount of energy that I now have to spend, you know, responding to people. You know, as someone who is an introvert with extroverted tendencies, I don't always want to explain myself. And so that brings about, you know, as we talked about in the past, that response of I'm fine or I'm good, because it gets exhausting. And that's just in the realm of strangers. And then in the realm of people that I love and people that, you know, are around me and support me, learning to allow them to help me. So now I'm experiencing an awareness of pride in my own heart from an invisibility standpoint, but also learning like, oh, okay, these people are placed in my life to help me. So learning to embrace that. So it's twofold. And so weeks go by, continue to go by, and I'm still trying to figure out how to navigate certain things with one hand. And now I'm having to get help with, you know, getting my shoes tied and putting my earrings in and getting my hair done and all these things that essentially I took pride in being able to do them myself, like laundry and folding and organizing. Like, it requires help on a level I have not had to experience ever. And so now all this is going on with my cervical spine down into my fingers. And then my other conditions decide to buddy up with HSD and my current complication. So chronic fatigue syndrome kicks up. And that was extremely exacerbated when the hurricane Ian came through. And so navigating barometric pressure complications and extreme levels of vertigo, because around this time of the year in the fall, vertigo tends to uptick for me, which is a symptom of both HSD for me as well as chronic migraine disease. So I have it in twofold capacities. So with that comes instability in my steps, just like this overall laxity in terms of balance, which can lead to falls, which, as you can imagine, the last thing I want to do is fall, get injured on top of what I'm already experiencing. So it opened the door to what I am now learning to navigate, is being an ambulatory mobility aid user. Something I never considered, never thought that I would even have to make a decision on, research about, even pursue in my at least experience with invisible disability. So now it becomes, not only am I navigating non-apparent symptomology and debilitating symptoms, but now I'm also navigating or stepping into the territory of visible disability with the added caveat of that I am an ambulatory mobility device user. So ambulatory in this sense means that while I can walk without a cane or assistance because of my symptoms, it's not always a wise decision for me to do that. So I need some sort of support, some sort of aid to ensure security in my steps, and you know, provide me with assistance even when no one is able to help me out. And that might not always be the case. Sometimes I might need it more days than others. I might go from one moment to the next needing it. I might go months needing it and then months not needing it. And so that's the interesting aspect of being an ambulatory mobility aid user, because it is totally contingent upon my needs. And being a young adult having to use a mobility device now, it's really weird because there's still that stigma attached to mobility aids in general. But then when you're an ambulatory device user, it raises questions for people like, well, why can't you use it today and then not, tomorrow, and all those things, when it's none of their business. But you still feel that pressure to, educate people from time to time, even as an advocate. And so it's an interesting dynamic that I'm having to navigate, because I know people who are in circumstances more severe than my own. Not that anybody's, set of symptoms is any more or less better in terms of how they need to navigate the world. But it provides insight for me into the need for us to understand the dynamics, the diversity, the often uncertain aspects of navigating invisible disabilities that most people will never have to interpret, navigate, or understand. Like, what 24-year-old do you know that has to navigate the world with a mobility aid, living with 4 invisible conditions in addition to some minor ones or smaller subcategories and the interchangeable aspects within each one of them? Not very many, if any. And so there's this growing need to raise awareness about ambulatory mobility device users, and many of us in the invisible disability community navigate that aspect. And so raising awareness that it's a dynamic thing. It's not that people are faking. It's genuinely because circumstances change, and having those supports is crucial to navigating life effectively. When I navigate the world with my white cane, it's just my way of navigating the world. And now with this introduction of my mobility aid, which I will show you in a few minutes, it's just another aspect of my journey that I'm navigating the world with. And so until we learn to view disabilities as the ability to navigate the world differently, we're going to continue to run into these speed bumps where people feel like they have to explain every single aspect of why, their disability is dynamic and not static, or why they have to do this thing to accommodate themselves one minute and not in the other way. So now I am going to show you my most recent acquisition. Shout out to my family for, encouraging me in this aspect. And so this is a smart crutch. I got it on Amazon. And so this assists in my stability as I'm walking. Right now I'm only using one for obvious reasons. But just using one, I experience much more confidence in my steps from a vestibular symptomology standpoint. So being able to have, what feels like a counter or a wall to lean on all the time, while also providing some sort of a workout is very crucial for me. I've only had it one day after this video, but already I've used it to go to an appointment, and being able to have this at my side, it's not as bulky as I anticipated, but being able to have it at my side kind of gave me confidence as I was maneuvering around the waiting room, and even as I was getting some testing done. So this is my mobility aid, and I will kind of be documenting my journey, so to speak, here and there, of just navigating the world as now an ambulatory mobility aid user. So without further ado, I will catch you guys in the next video with some more Invisible Disabilities Awareness Month content. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe.